Daniel was a self-made millionaire who prided himself on hard work and discipline. Despite his wealth, he believed in keeping things simple. His mansion gleamed with luxury, but one person kept it spotless: Maria, his maid. She was quiet, respectful, and always on time. Daniel often saw her rushing to catch the bus after work, clutching an old purse that was falling apart. He sometimes wondered why she never smiled much, but he never asked. To him, she was just another employee doing her job diligently. One morning, Daniel noticed Maria seemed distracted. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured his coffee. When he asked if everything was all right, she nodded with a forced smile. Later that day, he overheard her talking softly on the phone, her voice cracking. She mentioned something about a doctor and payment. Daniel felt a pang of concern. When she hung up, he asked if she needed help, but she shook her head quickly. "No, sir. It's nothing. I can manage," she said, eyes lowered. The next day, Daniel found Maria still working late into the night. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying. Something in him softened. He walked to her and said, "Maria, you've worked hard for years. Take the weekend off. And here," he pulled out his black credit card and placed it on the counter, "buy yourself something nice." She froze, staring at it in disbelief. "Sir, I can't," she began, but he interrupted, smiling. "No arguments. You deserve it." She hesitated, then took it with shaking hands. All weekend, Daniel's mind drifted back to Maria. He imagined her finally buying a dress, shoes, maybe even a small treat for herself. By Monday morning, he was curious to see her reaction. But when she arrived, her face was pale, her eyes puffy as if she hadn't slept. "Good morning," she whispered, returning the card carefully. Daniel smiled and said, "So, what did you buy?" She looked down, tears forming, and said softly, "Nothing for me, sir." Daniel frowned, confused. "Then what did you spend it on?" Maria pulled a small folded paper from her apron, a hospital receipt. Daniel's smile faded as he read the details. It was a payment for a child's heart surgery. "My son," she said quietly, voice trembling. "He's been sick for years. The doctors said he needed the operation soon, or she couldn't finish." Daniel was speechless. He had expected a shopping spree, not this. "Maria, you could have told me," he whispered. She shook her head. "I didn't want to bother you, sir. You already do so much by giving me work." Daniel stared at her, feeling his chest tighten. For the first time, he saw the person behind the uniform, a mother fighting silently for her child. "Maria, how much was the surgery?" he asked. She hesitated, then whispered the amount. It was large, but not impossible for him. Without thinking, he said, "I'll cover the rest." Her eyes widened. "No, sir, please. I can't accept," but he raised a hand. "You already did something far greater. You reminded me what kindness really means." That evening, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about Maria's story. He thought about his own childhood, growing up poor, watching his mother struggle to afford medicine. He realized how far he'd drifted from the man who once knew hardship. Maria's quiet strength humbled him. He felt ashamed of how he'd overlooked her pain all this time. Wealth had made him blind, but her selflessness had opened his eyes again. The next morning, Daniel visited the hospital listed on the receipt. There, he met a small boy named Luis, lying weakly on a bed with wires attached to his chest. The boy's eyes lit up when Maria entered. "Mama," he whispered. Daniel stood in silence, overwhelmed. The nurse told him Maria had been visiting every night after work, sometimes without eating, just to sit by her son. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He reached into his jacket and handed the nurse his credit card. "Make sure this child gets everything he needs," he said firmly. Days passed. Maria continued to work quietly, unaware that Daniel had paid for all the remaining hospital bills. One afternoon, she came rushing into the mansion, tears streaming down her face, but this time, they were tears of joy. "He's better, sir. Luis is going home." Daniel smiled warmly. "That's wonderful, Maria." She bowed her head, sobbing softly. "I don't know how to thank you." Daniel replied, "You already did, by teaching me what really matters." News of Daniel's act of kindness spread quietly among his staff. But he didn't care for praise. What mattered was seeing Maria smile again. For the first time, she laughed freely while polishing the grand staircase. The house felt warmer, more alive. Daniel began to join her in simple conversations, about life, hope, and faith. He no longer saw her as a maid, but as someone who carried more strength and grace than most people he knew. One weekend, Daniel visited Maria's small home. It was humble but filled with warmth. Little Luis ran up to him and hugged his leg. "Thank you, sir," the boy said with a bright smile. Daniel knelt down and hugged him back. In that moment, something shifted inside him. He realized no amount of money could buy the feeling of saving a life, of being human in a world that often forgot how to care. After that day, Daniel set up a small foundation in Luis's name to help children from poor families receive medical care. He didn't announce it publicly, he wanted it to remain a quiet promise. When Maria found out, she wept again, saying, "God will bless you, sir." Daniel only smiled and replied, "He already did, through you and your son." Months later, Maria's life changed completely. Her son grew stronger, her home brighter. Daniel continued to treat her like family, even inviting them to celebrate Christmas at his mansion. That night, as they sat by the glowing fireplace, Maria handed him a small wrapped box. "A gift?" he asked. She nodded shyly. Inside was a framed photo of Luis holding a handmade card that said, "Thank you for saving my heart." Daniel looked at the picture, his eyes moist. "No, Maria," he said softly, "you're the one who saved mine." She smiled through tears. The mansion that once echoed with silence now filled with laughter, the sound of something Daniel hadn't felt in years, belonging. That night, he realized that wealth wasn't about what you keep, but what you give away to heal others. From that day on, Daniel's life took a new path. He spent less time chasing profits and more time building hope. Maria continued working for him, not as a servant, but as a trusted friend. Her story became his reminder that compassion is the truest form of richness. And every time he saw Luis running through the garden, healthy and free, Daniel whispered to himself, "Sometimes, the smallest act of giving reveals the biggest heart." Subscribe to this channel and like it, thank you.